The cursor blinks. A heartbeat, mechanical, patient, watching. The market waits, but not for your strategy. It waits for you to stop lying to yourself. You call it fatigue. You call it procrastination. You call it not in the mood. But none of those are true. You're not tired. You're resisting. You're not unmotivated. You're afraid. The chart glows in the dark. Every candle breathes like a pulse of truth. And each second you hesitate, it reflects something you don't want to see. You think you lack energy. But what you lack is honesty. The market doesn't punish stillness. It exposes avoidance. It mirrors what you refuse to face, the quiet war between knowing and doing. You want freedom, but not the friction it demands. You want mastery, but not surrender. You want to conquer the market, but not dismantle the self that clings to control. So you study endlessly, convincing yourself you're improving. You scroll, you plan, you prepare. You build towers of knowledge, but never step into the field. Because comfort feels safer than truth. And resistance, though heavy, feels familiar. Like an old habit disguised as rest. You stare at the screen and tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow. But tomorrow is built by the same mind that avoids today. And that mind doesn't trade, it negotiates. The market doesn't listen to negotiation. It listens to presence. Every candle, every pulse of movement asks the same question. Will you show up? You say you want to be a trader. But deep down, you don't want to trade. You want to feel safe. You want freedom without exposure. Growth without discomfort. You want to touch chaos, without getting burned. But the truth is simple. You can't trade what you're not willing to feel. And the market is nothing but feeling, amplified, echoed, multiplied through time. You think resistance protects you from failure. It doesn't. It keeps you blind. It makes you mistake hesitation for logic, comfort for control, preparation for progress. That's the trick. Resistance doesn't stop you from working. It makes you work in circles. It makes you look busy, so you don't have to face the stillness of truth. You tell yourself you're learning, but deep down you know, you're hiding. Because stillness is exposure. And exposure is pain. The market doesn't care how much you know. It only cares how deeply you're willing to see. Every unclicked button, every second of delay, is not about effort, it's about fear. Resistance is not weakness. It's fear pretending to be wisdom. It tells you, wait until you're ready, but you're never ready to meet your own reflection. You think discipline is the cure, but discipline built on fear is still avoidance, just better dressed. You say, I'll start when I'm prepared. But the market doesn't test preparation. It tests awareness. And awareness doesn't wait. It acts. Quietly. Cleanly. Completely. The cursor keeps blinking. A soft reminder. Time isn't the test. Consciousness is. You can keep resisting. Or you can see. Because resistance isn't the absence of movement. It's the body's way of saying, I'm not ready to face what comes after truth. The market doesn't rush you. It just keeps reflecting. Until the day you realize, you were never avoiding work. You were avoiding yourself. You wake up and call it a new start. But it's the same morning wearing a different mask. The same thoughts rehearsed in a new tone. The same promise whispered to silence, today will be different. You open your platform. Charts glow like open doors. The world seems alive for a moment. Possibility humming in the screen's light. But your hands don't move. You wait for certainty to arrive. Like weather. It never does. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right setup. But you're waiting for a moment when fear disappears. That moment doesn't exist. Because fear is the price of awareness. You've been trying to trade without paying. Resistance pretends to protect you. It whispers, wait, refine, be sure. But what it really means is, don't expose me. You aren't avoiding work. You're avoiding visibility. Every act of hesitation is a trade that never lived. Every unsaved screenshot, every unplaced order, is an archive of safety. You call it preparation. The market calls it delay. You watch others act. You call them lucky, faster, reckless. But deep down you know, they simply move through the fear you keep negotiating with. They learn to sit with boredom, to act without applause. Because trading done well is boring. The drama you crave is chaos disguised as passion. You say you want calm, but you're addicted to intensity, to the chemical high of hope and collapse. You don't fear hard work. You fear stillness. Because stillness leaves you alone with truth. And truth dismantles identity. You spend hours watching charts, but not to see patterns, To feel safe in movement, you scroll, plan, refine, rebuild. You move everywhere except forward. You think more knowledge will cure the hesitation. But the hesitation was never born of ignorance, it was born of self-doubt. You label it analysis. But analysis can be another name for fear. The market doesn't care about your notes. It doesn't care about your plans. It only mirrors your relationship with uncertainty. You built an altar to potential. You worship what you could be, because potential keeps you innocent. As long as you're almost ready, you never have to fail. But potential rots. Every delayed action decomposes into self-contempt. Everyone not today becomes a quiet scar. Resistance hardens into identity. You stop pretending to act. You start pretending to try. You say, I'm learning. But what you're really learning is how to avoid exposure elegantly. You call yourself patient, but patience without awareness is paralysis. You call yourself disciplined, but discipline without honesty is decoration. The market watches. Unmoved, unimpressed. It reflects your comfort like glass. Each candle repeats. You don't want clarity. You want certainty. And certainty is death. The death of growth, the death of awareness. You claim you're protecting capital, but you're protecting ego. The balance you fear losing isn't in your account, it's in your self-image. Resistance is clever. It will convince you that hesitation is wisdom. It will turn fear into logic. It will disguise paralysis as patience. But the market has no patience for illusion. It waits until you exhaust yourself with explanations. Then it offers the same question again. Are you present now? Presence doesn't mean comfort. It means contact, raw, unfiltered, immediate. It's looking straight into the chart without armor. No story. No justification. Just now. Most traders never reach it, because to be fully present means there's nowhere left to hide. And most people would rather fail comfortably than see clearly. The irony: resistance consumes more energy than action. Hesitation drains faster than movement. Comfort costs the most. You study the market to master it, but the market studies you first. It sees every flicker of avoidance, every breath of hesitation. It doesn't punish you for it, it just reflects it back. The false breakout that tricks you. The reversal that stops you out. They're not accidents. They're mirrors. They show you exactly where belief ends and awareness begins. And each reflection asks for the same trade. Surrender control, hold presence. You used to think the goal was consistency. Now you begin to suspect the goal is honesty. Because consistency without honesty is performance. And performance without presence is noise. Resistance thrives in noise. It hides inside motion, inside study, inside goals. But silence kills it. Silence exposes it. You sit in front of the chart and the silence feels heavy, but that weight is truth entering. You start to sense what you've been avoiding. It was never the work that scared you. It was the mirror that would show you how afraid you are of not being enough. You don't want freedom. You want relief. But relief is temporary. Freedom is earned through awareness. You're not at war with the market. You're at war with a part of you that fears transformation. And the market? It has infinite ammunition. Every tick is another reflection. You can keep hiding behind research, or you can admit the truth. You don't lack discipline. You lack willingness to feel. That's the real cost. Not time. Not energy. Feeling. The moment you stop avoiding that cost, the work becomes lighter. You move cleaner. You act without forcing. But until then, you'll stay in the loop. Planning, postponing, protecting, and calling it progress. The market waits. Unmoved. Unimpressed. Until you realize that every delay, every comfort, every safe thought is just another way of saying, I'm not ready to meet myself yet. At first, the chart seemed alive. Now it feels sentient. It doesn't move. It responds. Every candle a breath, every flicker a heartbeat, every retrace a memory surfacing from your nervous system. You used to think you were studying data, but you were studying yourself through numbers that don't lie. The market doesn't have emotion. It has reflection. It takes the shape of whoever stares at it long enough. You stare back, and the reflection deepens. The pattern that failed yesterday fails again today. Not because of the setup, because of the state you bring to it. You repeat the same decision and expect a different outcome. But nothing external changes until something internal softens. The chart breathes with you. When you tense, it tightens. When you doubt, it hesitates. When you surrender, it flows. It has always been this way. The silent feedback loop between consciousness and consequence. The mind doesn't want to believe it. It prefers distance. It calls the chart the market, as if naming it creates separation. But there is no separation. The one who clicks and the one who gets reflected are the same. You thought you were analyzing price. You were decoding emotion. Support and resistance were just metaphors for faith and fear. The moment you realize this, data turns to dialogue. Every candle begins to speak. You see what you are. It shows you impatience in a premature entry. It shows you attachment in an overstay. It shows you ego in revenge trades. You're not punished for these. You're illuminated by them. At first, the illumination hurts. Awareness always does. Because to see clearly means you can't pretend anymore. You notice how every delay has the same flavor, hesitation hiding as logic. You call it confirmation. But it's comfort disguised as process. The mind wants safety more than truth. So it builds rituals of control. Extra indicators, stricter rules, endless tweaks. Each one a small prayer for certainty in a world that offers none. But certainty is death. When you're certain, you stop learning. When you stop learning, the mirror clouds. The market becomes noise again. And noise is easy. It demands nothing from you except reaction. You start to see that resistance wasn't failure. It was communication. The body saying, I don't trust myself yet. And trust can't be forced. It's built through seeing, through presence, through staying. So you stay. You sit with the impulse to flee. You breathe through the urge to control. You watch the thoughts, the tension, the stories, all arise, all dissolve. And the chart reflects that too. The chaos starts to look rhythmic. The volatility feels natural, like weather. You begin to sense that nothing needs fixing, only observing. Awareness starts replacing effort. You no longer attack the market, you listen to it. Each movement becomes an echo of an inner tone. When you're calm, even red candles look serene. When you're reactive, even profits feel wrong. The mirror doesn't lie. It can't. It only repeats what exists in front of it. This is where most traders quit. Not because they lose money, but because they can't bear to see the part of themselves that loses clarity. They'd rather rebuild identity than dissolve illusion. But if you endure the reflection long enough, something changes. The mind stops fighting. It starts watching. And watching is the beginning of transformation. You see that the so-called discipline you envied in others wasn't about control. It was about intimacy with fear. They learned to feel the tremor without fleeing. They didn't suppress emotion. They stayed conscious through it. That's the hidden edge, awareness under pressure. The trader who can stay awake while the mind screams is the one who finally trades reality instead of story. Resistance begins to melt, not disappear. Melt. It still visits, but it no longer commands. It arrives as a signal. Look here. Awareness faded. And you thank it, because even discomfort becomes guidance once it's seen. The chart becomes quieter, or maybe it was always quiet, you just couldn't hear over your own noise. You start noticing details that were invisible before. The micropause before breakouts. The rhythm between impulse and correction. You realize patterns aren't found, they're heard. And hearing requires silence. The silence you once feared now feels magnetic. You crave it, because in silence, the mirror is clean. You finally understand. The market never taught you discipline. It taught you humility. Humility is the gateway to awareness, the collapse of control into clarity. Every hesitation you called weakness was actually the body protecting an illusion. And once that illusion dissolves, action flows naturally. Effort turns effortless. The trader moves when movement feels inevitable, not when the mind demands certainty. You used to ask, when will I be ready? Now you see, readiness is a form of resistance. Awareness doesn't need readiness. It needs presence. The mirror has done its job. You can finally look without flinching. And in that still gaze, you stop being the observer. You become the reflection itself, awake, aware, and indistinguishable from what you once tried to control. There comes a point when the noise stops sounding external. The ticks blur into silence. Even the breath between candles feels like it's watching you. You've run out of explanations. Every excuse, every story, every one almost ready, spent. The system didn't fail. The narrative did. You used to believe awareness would come after success. Now you see success only comes after surrender. The collapse doesn't begin loudly. It starts in small realizations, that your discipline was control, that your patience was fear-wearing manners, that your focus was obsession in disguise. reality arrives like cold water. The shock isn't the market's volatility, it's your own reflection, unguarded. The illusion breaks, and there's nothing left to hide behind. For a moment, you try to rebuild the mask. You open books, revise rules, adjust metrics, but none of it holds. The scaffolding collapses the instant awareness touches it. You wanted certainty. You got truth instead. Truth doesn't feel good. It feels clean. You begin to see that resistance was never a problem to fix. It was a teacher repeating the same lesson until you listened. The market was never your adversary. It was the mirror that refused to lie. The ego panics when it realizes it has nothing left to control. That panic, the shaking, the rush of heat, the urge to quit, is the sound of identity breaking. Let it break. You can't trade consciously while clinging to the character called trader. The market doesn't speak that language. It speaks silence, precision, presence. The collapse deepens. You see how every moment of hesitation was a confession. I don't trust myself yet. You see how every burst of aggression was an apology. I'm afraid of being powerless. And you see how both come from the same place, the fear of not existing without doing. That's the core illusion. You thought motion kept you alive, but it only kept you asleep. Stillness is not death, it's clarity. When you stop trying to move the market finally moves through you. You start noticing a strange quiet. It isn't peace yet, it's the absence of noise. Decisions arise unforced, clean, almost anonymous. The hand moves, the order executes, the heart barely flinches. No drama, just flow. You realize you were never lazy. You were unready to die to who you were. And every delay was mercy, not failure. Mercy from a consciousness that knew the cost of transformation. Now that cost is paid. You no longer crave motivation. You crave truth, because truth doesn't expire when fear returns. You see that control was never mastery. It was resistance pretending to be strength. The market teaches mastery by removing what isn't real. Every loss is subtraction. Every mistake, refinement. Every silence, instruction. At first this emptiness feels unbearable. Then it feels inevitable. Finally it feels natural. You understand now why the market seems cruel to those who chase comfort. It must destroy the illusion before awareness can breathe. It's not punishing you. It's purifying you. The collapse doesn't end with despair. It ends with humility. Humility is what remains when certainty burns away. It's the space where presence begins. You no longer try to prove anything. You stop comparing your path to others. Because there's nothing to prove when you realize no one's watching. The cursor blinks again. Not as a threat, but as rhythm. A reminder that time is neutral. It doesn't demand action. It offers awareness. From this point on, your edge isn't speed, or accuracy, or strategy. It's silence. The ability to stay conscious when every instinct screams for escape. This is what the market has been training you for. Not profit, but presence. It strips, burns, mirrors, until only awareness remains. And when there's nothing left to resist, awareness begins to move on its own. The body relaxes. The breath slows. You realize you don't need to trust the process. You are the process. The collapse has become transformation. And the trader? The chart? The breath? One motion. You once thought surrender meant defeat. Now you see surrender was the doorway. Control dies. Awareness survives. That was the lesson all along. The market doesn't clap for you. It doesn't need to. Its candles continue to flicker. Steady, impersonal, alive. But now, when you watch them, you feel something different. Not victory, not relief, recognition. Recognition that the market never changed. You did. Something changes. Not the chart, the observer. The same candles rise and fall. But the space between them feels wider, cleaner, alive. You sit differently now. The body isn't tense, it's listening. Every movement on the screen is met by stillness within. For the first time, you don't feel the need to force understanding. You just see. This is the beginning of mastery. Not in prediction, but in perception. You finally understand. The market was never about control. It was about consciousness. You used to think discipline meant effort. Now you see discipline means absence of distortion. When the noise inside quiets, decisions become clear on their own. You act when movement feels inevitable. You wait when silence is true. Not because a rule told you to. Because reality did. There's no resistance left. Only rhythm. Even hesitation feels different now. Not paralysis, but awareness pausing to verify alignment. Everything slows, yet nothing feels delayed. You used to trade from fear of missing out. Now you trade from faith that what's meant for your awareness can't be missed. Because markets don't reward aggression. They reward clarity. You see how every loss was a message written in volatility. Each drawdown said, "You were not present." Each profit whispered, "You stayed awake." And you realized that the purpose of both was never financial. It was psychological. They were the same signal in two dialects, reflection and reinforcement. You begin to see the paradox that terrified you before. Winning and losing are the same mirror. One inflates, the other humbles, but both reveal where awareness stands. The irony is you're still the same trader. Same tools, same system, same market. The difference is that now, nothing owns you. The chart moves and you move with it, not because you've learned control, but because you've learned intimacy with chaos. Fear still visits, doubt still speaks, but now they sound like weather. Temporary, necessary, passing. You don't suppress them, you acknowledge them. You let them exist, then let them go. That's the shift from control to awareness. Control says, eliminate fear. Awareness says, include it. And inclusion brings calm, the kind of calm that doesn't depend on outcomes. It doesn't care if the candle turns red or green. It just stays. Presence becomes your only edge. And edges built on presence don't dull with time, they deepen. You realize you've stopped needing motivation. Motivation was the noise that distracted you from clarity. Now, clarity moves you without asking permission. The work becomes quiet, almost invisible. No more heroics, no more declarations of change. Just repetition. Aware, gentle, consistent, the kind that looks like nothing but becomes everything. The market hasn't softened. You have. Softness isn't weakness, it's receptivity. You used to fight to prove your strength. Now you listen to remember your balance. You discover that patience isn't waiting, it's listening without pressure. And consistency isn't control, it's harmony with uncertainty. You no longer chase outcomes, you cultivate states. Awareness is your baseline. Action arises naturally from it, like breath following silence. When you win, you breathe. When you lose, you breathe. When nothing happens, you breathe. The rhythm doesn't change, only your story used to. Now there's no story, just presence. Presence doesn't age, doesn't fear, doesn't chase. It simply exists, and so do you. You start to sense the beauty hidden in repetition. The open, the close, the wait, the silence between ticks, each one an invitation to stay conscious. The trading desk becomes meditation, the candle a teacher, the chart a mirror, and the market, your reflection in motion. You've stopped demanding that trading make you free. You've learned that freedom was the foundation, not the prize. That's the realization. Freedom isn't what happens when you win. It's what allows you to lose without collapsing. The game never changed, you did. You stopped confusing excitement for progress, and silence for failure. You discovered that stillness wasn't the absence of growth, but its proof. The trader who once chased performance now values presence. And performance follows presence naturally, like a tide obeying the moon. This clarity is weightless. You no longer carry the burden of self-improvement. You trade because it's the most honest reflection of your consciousness. No longer a career, a test, or a measure. Just an expression of attention. You realize you could stop trading tomorrow and still feel whole. That's when you know you've transcended it. The market no longer defines you. It reveals you. And what it reveals now is peace. Not the absence of motion, but the absence of inner friction. That's the rarest profit. Not the balance that grows, but the awareness that doesn't shrink when everything else moves. You breathe again. Still watching the chart, still listening to silence. And for the first time, you understand the line between doing and being is imaginary. You were never trading the market. You were trading your mind, and the trade finally closed in awareness. The chart hasn't changed. It never does, but you see it differently now. Not as data, not as risk, not as potential, but as rhythm. Each candle exhales what the last one breathed in. Each pulse of light is a reminder. Nothing is lost, only transformed. The cursor still blinks, a metronome marking the tempo of awareness. It no longer mocks your hesitation. It mirrors your calm. You sit in silence, not waiting, just here. The same screen that once felt like judgment now feels like space. You used to chase the chart, begging it to give meaning to your effort. Now you let it move, and it gives you nothing but reflection. Which is all you ever needed. The mind is quiet. No performance to protect, no image to uphold. Just presence breathing through form. You watch the chart and realize, it was never about money. Money was only the mirror's dust, the distraction layer between you and yourself. The market never punished you. It purified you. It took everything you used to identify with and left only what can't be taken. Awareness. That's all that remains when illusion dies. The part of you that once feared effort wasn't lazy, it was protecting its old architecture. The part that called for certainty wasn't weak, it just didn't know how to trust silence yet. Now they've both dissolved into presence. Resistance still appears, but it no longer roots. Fear still visits, but it no longer stays. Even failure feels different now. Less like pain, more like texture. Loss isn't a wound anymore, it's information. A soft voice saying, "Here." Awareness slipped, and so you listen. Without guilt, without defense. The lesson doesn't hurt, it clarifies. That's how you know the transformation is real. Pain becomes teacher. Teacher becomes mirror. Mirror becomes peace. You finally see the market for what it is. A silent monastery with moving walls, teaching discipline through reflection, teaching awareness through pressure, teaching surrender through repetition. You realize the game was never between you and the market. It was between your illusion and your awareness. And awareness won. Not by force, but by patience. The cursor blinks again. You breathe with it. No rush. No craving. Only rhythm. The same rhythm that carried every candle, every hesitation, every breakthrough. You remember how it started. All the resistance, all the comfort, all the noise. And now, none of it feels wrong. It was all the same movement leading to this silence. Awareness doesn't judge the path. It integrates it. It whispers, every delay was part of your timing. You smile, not out of pride, but recognition. There was never anything to fix. Only illusions to outgrow. You look at the chart one last time tonight. The screen hums softly, ticks passing like waves. Each sound a pulse of life. Neutral, infinite, kind. You realize you don't need to trade to be a trader. You just need to stay aware. Trading was the practice. Awareness was the point. So you stay still. No victory, no conclusion, no applause. Just the quiet clarity of a mind that no longer runs. The cursor blinks. You blink with it. The market moves. You move with it. And somewhere between those movements, there's nothing left to chase. Nothing left to prove. Nothing left to avoid. Only awareness, watching itself unfold.